Hi, I'm Dr. Felice Gersh, and I'm so pleased to be here with you. Today we're going to talk about a really important but underappreciated topic concerning how stress affects acne. This is not a little topic because acne affects a huge percentage of the population, and it causes great distress. Most people recognize that when you have acne, it creates anxiety and depression. People don't want to be seen. They want to cover their face, and they feel just really sad. So we know that having acne can create emotional distress. But what most people don't know is that having emotional distress can contribute to the severity of acne. I'm going to talk about 3 ways that stress can actually exacerbate acne. And then I'm going to present to you 4 ways, actionable ways that you can implement immediately to lower your stress and the effects that stress have on acne. So let's begin. Well, of the 3, I'm going to start with the gut. You know, in functional medicine, we almost always start with the gut. So for those of you who are familiar with the idea that the center of the universe of the body really resides in the gut, you won't be surprised to learn that indeed the gut has a big impact on the skin. Well, if you have an impaired gut barrier and you have dysbiosis, that means an abnormal composition of your gut microbiome, that will lead to inflammation. So what happens is when you have the wrong microbial population, and you may know this, but just in case, just a very quick overview, we have trillions of microbes that live in our gut. It's the biggest microbiome of the body. And if those microbial population components are not right, and you have an impaired gut barrier, there's a single layer of cells that lines the gut. And if those cells lining the gut become inflamed and start to break down the little components that are holding the cells together in what we call tight junctions, the cells of the lining, these enterocytes, will drift apart, and toxins from within the intestinal cavity, the lumen, will actually pass between the cells into the body itself. We call that leaky gut. And what passes through are what we call endotoxins, toxins from within the body, or the other medical term is lipopolysaccharides. Now, when these toxins get in, they are toxins, they activate the immune cells that line the gut, creating systemic or overall total body-wide inflammation. Now, when you have inflammation, that promotes insulin resistance. And insulin resistance then will lead to elevation of your insulin, because insulin promotes the transport of glucose into cells. So when you don't have proper transport because of resistance of the receptors to insulin, the pancreas will make more insulin. Now, when you have high circulating levels of insulin, it promotes the production of another hormone called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. That, in turn, can trigger an increase in testosterone production, and testosterone increases acne. So that's how the gut microbiome, when it's abnormal and you have leaky gut, you can actually increase acne because you've increased the production of testosterone. That's a huge problem for women developing acne. Now, what about another area? Well, when you have a lot of stress, a lot of emotional turmoil in your body, it activates what's called the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus in the brain, and then it's the pituitary, the adrenal gland. They all work together, and they create the stress response. And part of the stress response means the production of more adrenal hormone called cortisol. When you have a lot of cortisol that's circulating, guess what it does? It changes the microbiome of the skin. Now, every surface, every organ system, everything in the body has its own unique microbial population. that we call the microbiome. And the skin has a very unique one. The microbes that live on the skin, like on the face, the chest, they actually protect the skin from invading bad bacteria. We call them the pathogens. And the good guys, the ones we want on our skin, we call them the commensals. So when you have too much stress and too much cortisol, it actually will directly act on the skin to change the microbial population or the microbiome of the skin into a pathologic one that kills off the commensals, and then you grow the wrong kinds of pathogens. And there are studies to show that this is exactly what happens. And then you don't have the protecting microbes that fend off the bad ones, and the bad ones get in and create little islands of infection, the pustules, the pimples, the deep acne, and so forth that are so dreaded. Now, what is another area? Well, it turns out that the skin itself is an incredibly complex structure. It's actually a neuroendocrine structure. So what does that mean? It means the skin itself actually makes hormones, neurotransmitters, neuropeptides, all kinds of things. It's like a little factory. And what happens when you have stress is that stress will directly change what's going on with the skin's production of all of these really important products. That's why they call it neuroendocrine, neurotransmitters, hormones, peptides, and so on. Now, how does it do it? How does stress change how the skin is going to produce all of these really important products? Well, it turns out that stress involves what's called the autonomic nervous system, or automatic. The autonomic nervous system controls things we never think about, like sweating, the temperature of our skin and our body, our pulse, our heartbeat, and, like for the gut, it affects peristalsis. So it turns out that when you have a lot of stress, it increases the sympathetic, the stress component of the autonomic nervous system, and it decreases the parasympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system. That changes the very dynamics within the skin because there are receptors that are existing throughout all of the skin to these neurological stimuli from the autonomic nervous system. And what happens is that changes the hormones produced in the skin that have a big effect. It changes the blood flow. The blood vessels that help skin to heal, for example, will become more constricted. The production of local estrogen in the skin that helps and promotes healing in the skin will change. So we have many dynamic changes that occur within the skin. What's another one? Well, there are many what we call adnexal structures in the skin. There's the epidermis, the dermis, and then there are these adnexal structures like the hair follicles, the sweat glands, the sebaceous glands, and they will change. They will change how they put out their products. So you're going to change the sebum production. That's like the oily stuff. And what happens under a stressed skin is it puts out more of the sebum, which then clogs up the pores and changes, once again, ultimately, the microbiome and the actual components of the sebum. The fatty acids that are produced become more pro-inflammatory. So there are these three amazing ways that stress will change the skin directly to promote an aggravation of acne. So remember what they are. The gut will change. Under stress, you're going to have more what we call leaky gut, and then you're going to have endotoxemia, which increases inflammation, which increases insulin resistance, which increases IGF-1, which increases testosterone production, which worsens acne. And then we have the direct stress effect through the HPA axis, increasing higher amounts of cortisol production, and cortisol directly will change the skin microbiome to not allow it to be the protective type that it should be. And then the direct effects of stress through the autonomic nervous system stimulation of skin change the production locally in skin of all of these incredibly important neurotransmitters and hormones and peptides, and will change the types of sebum, what's in the sebum, sweating, and hair follicles as well. So that's all the direct effects that stress has to aggravate acne. Now, what can we do about it knowing this? Well, here are 4 things you can do effective immediately. One is start eating an anti-inflammatory diet, one that's going to nurture the right gut microbiome, that's going to help prevent and resolve impaired gut barrier or leaky gut, so that you won't have this endotoxemia, insulin resistance, and so on and so forth, that's going to increase testosterone production. So we have to heal the gut. Now, what's an anti-inflammatory diet? Plant-based. Lots and lots of plants. If you have acne and you want to take an action immediately, now this is a goal. Try to eat 9 cups of varied types of vegetables every day. Like what they say, eat the colors of the rainbow, and add in 3 cups of fruit. So if you have 3 meals a day, that's 3 cups of varied types of vegetables. That means leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, root vegetables. Try to have 3 cups, half cooked, half raw, every day, along with 3 cups of varied types of fruit. And try to add in fiber, even more fiber than what I just said that comes with the vegetables and fruit, like legumes, beans, and lentils, and whole grains like buckwheat, amaranth. These are the ancient grains. And, for example, millet and quinoa. Try to eat a cup of that every day. And don't forget nuts and seeds. So have a plant-based diet. Limit animal protein to only 3 ounces a day of the healthiest animal protein you can find. And take also a supplement of omega-3, because that's very anti-inflammatory and will promote the proper sebum components, that fatty, oily stuff that comes out on the skin, to protect your skin from harmful bacteria. Next, I want you to take a few different types of supplements, and you can experiment with these. These are the Adrenal Adaptogens. These are the supplements that help to calm the body down. My personal favorite is ashwagandha. That's an Ayurvedic or Indian herb that is amazing for helping to get people to that happy space, that calm middle of the road. So you're not too wired and tired. You're not too draggy and low. That happy middle space. Another one of my favorites, and also an Indian Ayurvedic herb, is Bacopa. It helps a lot with reducing anxiety. And then there's some other lovely ones like passion flower, lemon balm, L-theanine, which is a derivative of green tea. These are wonderfully calming. And you can have them in tea form too. For example, holy basil, also known as tulsi tea, is a wonderful calming tea. And kava tastes delicious as a tea, and it helps suppress anxiety. Now, CBD, not the kind with marijuana, is also calmative. So having a little bit of CBD, especially in the evening, can also be very beneficial. It's also anti-inflammatory. So those are a few basic types of supplements that can really help to control stress. And then, of course, mind-body medicine. So I personally love guided imagery. That's where you hear a lovely voice and there's background music, and it takes you on a mind journey. It says, imagine you're in, a beautiful place, and you can imagine a forest or a meadow, the ocean, the mountains, a beautiful place, real or imaginary. And then it tells you what to think to help control your immune system, your gut, your stress. So that's guided imagery. You can also take courses in different types of meditation. You can do walking meditation, looking at the flowers, the trees, the clouds. You can do prayer meditation. There are many forms of meditation. And then there are other things called progressive relaxation. Then there's tapping, which is really, really nice. All of these can lower stress and actually improve acne. There was one type of mind-body medicine that had an amazing outcome in a study. This really made me realize the power of mind-body medicine. They had a young woman who had horrific acne, They gave no treatment other than hypnosis, which is a very effective mind-body treatment for acne. Just going through a therapy program of hypnosis, guess what? Her acne completely cleared. Does that tell you the power that stress has in a negative way and the power of mind-body medicine, in this case, hypnotherapy? Amazing. Look into it. Another one of my favorites is massage, body work, just helping to relieve the fascial fibrosis, getting the nerves and blood vessels freed from that fibrotic scarring. The internal component of the fascia becomes fibrotic when we sit and we're always looking at the computer, and that actually creates a lot of stress in the body. So a calming, soothing massage can be amazing. I also love relaxation baths with some essential oils like lavender or rose oil. Frankincense is another one of my favorites. And the last tip of the day for reducing stress and the negative effects of stress is exercise. Of course, the universal medicine. Exercise has been shown to improve gut barrier health, improve gut microbiome diversity. It lowers stress hormones. It relieves depression better than the SSRI antidepressants. For example, drugs like Prozac, Lexapro. Exercise did better for improving depression status. So exercise, both aerobic and resistance training like weightlifting, is amazing for reducing stress and helping the gut to become healed and resolving leaky gut. So remember, healing the gut, exercising, mind-body medicine, and supportive supplements can play dramatic roles in improving your acne. So how's about that for some great tips? Hope to see you soon. Take care.